Hey, everyone. I'm Alan Schimmel,
This is Mitch Ashley.
and you're listening to DevOps Chats.
Yeah, baby, DevOps chats. We are
So,
back.
Mitch, I don't know. We got off track here for a couple months as, this Futurum gig that you've undertaken, where you're now VP of Research for DevOps and related activities. And, of course, I think it was really kind of the whole Futurum merger acquisition that I don't know, maybe that had a lot to do with it, but we dropped our cadence there and we got to get back into it. But it's good to have you on. It's good to be on with you.
It's good to be doing it. I mean, we've been doing this in 2004 or so, somewhere around the time frame. We've been at the podcasting thing. So, yeah, it's been an interesting, really 12 months or so. 9 months, I guess, has been since the Futurum deal kind of popped up, and it's all closed, all good, and we're all, I'm in this
full speed ahead
modified role now, and so, interesting times for all of us. Excited about the future.
Yep, as am I. But we could talk about that on the Futurum podcast. Oh, yes. Wait. What Futurum podcast? But maybe we'll do one. But let's stick to DevOps for this one, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So, Mitch, I can't help but feel not complacent, but there's sort of a lull in the DevOps world, right? And I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a sign of the maturity of DevOps in that it just is, right? You're not fighting religious or political wars about DevOps anyway. People, I think, understand what it is. I think that the relationship between DevOps and let's say platform engineering, cloud native, SRE, all of these, not competing necessarily, but all of these adjacent frameworks, disciplines, they're all, there was a lot of jostling for space and priority and what have you, but they seem to have settled in a little bit, waiting to see how AI disrupts it all.
I think we've reached, I don't know if it's a plateau or just the point of convergence where enough of these things have come together. And DevOps, for the longest time, we felt like DevOps is on the leading edge, of adoption, and there's more people kind of like cloud native was. And even cloud natives, Kubernetes, platform engineering, DevOps, even SRE, I think are mainstream. I mean, it's not like everyone everywhere is doing this, but if you look at the data, I've done enough surveys, multiple surveys now, you're looking at 2/3 of organizations are in either they are kind of accelerating their adoption, they're in the standardization phase, or they're in what they call a mastery phase. They feel like they're doing DevOps really well, and it's used on a majority of projects, maybe all projects in some cases. Same is becoming true with cloud native. Same, Kubernetes is that underlying everything now. So a lot of stuff we've worked on just in the past 2 years seemed like it was evolving, and now it's evolved. We've reached the next kind of, maybe we're Homo sapiens now, and as opposed to prior eras of humanity or whatever in these technologies. But I'm not saying we're done. We've reached nirvana, and this is it. But it's a different place than when you're climbing the hill.
Yes. And I don't think this plateau we've reached is necessarily nirvana. I think there is something to what I said earlier, which is, I think people in some respects waiting for the other shoe to drop regarding AI and how this is going to change everything that we've built these years.
I think we're going to talk about some of the anticipation, whether it's warranted yet or not. But clearly, as AI projects are trying to get out of the pilot and prototyping stages and get into production, now it's starting to ask the question of like, okay, how does this fit with our workflows, our pipelines? And are they the same? Are they different? It's got this data thing that goes with it, with the model or with the algorithms. And they update on their own cycle. It's not the same as just kind of the software we've been developing that's, in whatever Rust or Python or whatever language that we're using.
Sure.
So that's kind of the next hill to really take, is understanding better how those pipelines converge or align, or where do they intersect, and getting more sophisticated at that. Because my concern, if we don't, then DevOps become the holdback for we got the AI assistance in production, but your software is not tying to it. You don't know how to update it in a way that can work with our release cycles of models and data, et cetera. So it's an important thing to work on. I think we're going to see a lot of vendors stepping up to start to address this.
Yeah. I also see things, Mitch, starting to evolve into what I call the app dev. And I hope it's not rebuilding the silo. Mm-hmm. But there's the app dev aspects of things. So platform engineering makes it easier for app dev, cybersecurity for the app dev, cloud native for the app dev process. And then there's the, not to use the word ops, but, the deployment aspect of it, and that, the observability pieces of it, and testing sort of, I think, is still in that app dev. But where in DevOps, we were really good at viewing it as one ball. I think you are starting to see lines emerge here, right? And I think part of it is a reaction to the shift left, or I think first we shifted left, and now the pendulum's swinging back a little bit from, hey, you can't just shift everything left. There's some stuff that still belongs here on the right, or shift everywhere. It's interesting. I did an interview with our friend Jeff Williams, the CTO of Contrast Security, last week, and their new thing at Contrast, I think they call it AVM. It's vulnerability management for production.
Mm. Yep.
Vulnerability management for production. Well, gee, that sounds familiar.
We've been to this concert. We saw this movie.
I think we helped write that movie.
I think we're in the black and white version of the movie.
And wait a second. You're going to tell me which vulnerabilities are critical and which ones are reachable, and man, I wish I would have come up with these ideas.
And my boss, the Colonel, can see this too. Oh my God.
Yeah. And, but in talking to Jeff, so what they're doing is they're really taking a very AppSec view of vulnerability, not maybe the vulnerability scanning that you and I were doing at Still Secure 20 years ago.
Out of infrastructure and operating system.
Yeah. It's more AppSec scanning. Mm-hmm. But in any event, again, shifting right. So, I like I said, I think this is a sign of the maturity of DevOps and people sort of waiting for this next shoe to drop. I know you had mentioned, there was an article out in the Times, I believe, about, looking at unemployment figures, that for the first time, and as long as I can remember, unemployment is actually up for software developers.
Yeah, and it's the Times or the Wall Street Journal. I don't remember where the article was, but it was saying, I think this was as of the December numbers, 5.7. It went up like 2 points, close to 2 percentage points for IT, unemployment rate, which is, like I said, when did that happen, right? What about all these commercials of, you want a recession-proof job, go into IT? Maybe not. And it's, here's my opinion about it is, if you remember, we saw sort of the efficiency cuts after COVID, right? We've got to get more efficient. So we're going to lop all these people off that we didn't hire, that we don't need anymore because we overhired in COVID times, and that was, a bit of a reaction, maybe a big overreaction in some cases. We're going through this cycle again of, AI is here. We won't need the mid-tier of developers, according to Zuck, which I don't trust his analysis of developer skills, but anyway, that's a whole nother topic. And we don't need those people anymore, so we're going to lay all those people off and not hire anymore. But it's more than just, of course, Facebook. It is this view of we're going to need fewer developers so we can not hire as many as we had planned. So it's less hiring as opposed to always being layoffs. And, I follow this space really closely. We're not there yet. We're not there where AI is taking over developer jobs in any whole-scale manner. Maybe it's, a year away. Maybe. But it's, people are still experimenting with AI. I mean, I talked with a major compute platform, hardware manufacturer, and, they've gone through the ideation and experimentation to, okay, now what of the 500 things we could do with AI and development across the SDLC? What are the handful of things we're really going to center around, and where we're going to go pick a product to, build around, with Copilot or Codacity or whichever circle. We're at this early maturation phase. So I think we're rotating on not needing all these IT people, at least not yet.
I don't disagree, but I don't know if it's solely AI that's responsible for it.
Okay, we'll say more then.
I think part of it also is the current political economic climate, interest rates, business climate, if you will. Mitch, I was talking to a good friend of mine. You know him. I don't want to mention names here, but he was the CTO, CPO for one of the larger gaming companies in the world. And he led the team that built their online gaming. He left, or he's leaving, because, look, for the last, whatever it is, 4, 5, 6 years, they paid him handsomely to build out this platform. And not only paid him, but gave him virtually carte blanche to hire the software developers and team to build and operate this platform. And it's been successful by any way you want to measure
wildly,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the bottom line is that this year, the push is not necessarily to keep growing that platform or keep upgrading it with new features or, to keep innovating necessarily. It's more about maintaining. It's more about, we're not going to grow the top line as much, but we're going to grow the bottom line instead. And so we're not going to pay people we're not going to pay, developers $300,000 a year. We're not going to pay exorbitant amounts, to lock in the leadership with, all kinds of incentivized deals that are top line or code related, how much code you put out. And I think that's something we're seeing in corporate America, which is, you know what? We can't develop just because we can. Everything has to be tied to the bottom line. Everything has to be tied to revenue. And if that revenue doesn't make sense, we can't do it.
Well, we see this over and over again, right? It's the time of, I'll spend whatever it takes to gain my market share and be competitive in the online gaming industry. For one, let's pick that. Okay, well, that's, now it's commonplace that I'm every other ad on sports TV and every fourth ad on every other channel. It's reached that point. When there's some who argue, I think it was Paul Krugman, is that his name, the economist?
Yeah, from the Times.
He thinks we're going to hit an AI bubble, right? We're kind of headed into the next cycle of this again. And, we of course always rotate. That's my favorite new word, by the way, over rotate. On AI investment, we saw that with DeepSeek, pulling back a little bit, like, wait a minute, maybe it isn't always the next biggest hammer. Maybe there's more than one way to innovate. And whether we're going to see a bubble or not, eventually some kind of bubble is going to happen with AI. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a big one or not. But that's, today it's, I don't need developers tomorrow. And where can I find them? At the same time I don't have enough security people still. Can't find the people that I need to secure all this AI stuff, right? So there's all these kind of successive waves of, we saw that bubble too, and the next one will happen, just like the next one will grow.
Yep. But, Mitch, as we were talking offline and you mentioned, an interesting twist is that while unemployment went up like in IT general or software developers, the plan is that cybersecurity needs even more people than we always say. Mm-hmm. And that's gone down. Mm-hmm. So, if AI is one of the driving forces, or if government, regulations is another force in this, clearly the message is, hey, but we need to lock down what we have.
Well, it's the theory of constraints all over again, right? We push the constraint to the next thing. Now it's security, right? How are we going to secure all this? And we already didn't have enough security people, and it'll be ops next or whatever the next kind of constraint is. And we're following that pattern. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it in a systemic way like that.
Yeah, no, I think you got it. Holistic, right?
No.
But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because the good news is the market has a way of evening these things out, right? It's like fluids finding its lowest level there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You don't have enough software being developed, they'll get more software developers. I don't think, as you said, that we're anywhere near to the point where we could just turn AI loose and develop the software.
Someday we'll still be saying, where are we going to find those Java developers now to support all that Java code that was written way back when? Just
exactly like COBOL.
Today, we'll go through that phase too.
I think we will. Mitch, you were out in Vegas last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, and for the Dynatrace show, speaking, or maybe some legacy stuff, right? A lot of people don't know what to make of Dynatrace. They've been around a long time. They've gone through some changes and evolved. I mean, there's a mainframe aspect of things, but observability. And give us a report from the field in Vegas. What'd you see there?
It was at Dynatrace Perform. They had a number of announcements, and it was a very good conference. I think it was about 2,000 people is what they said were attending. The standouts for me was observability for developers. We've talked about using observability in development and test, but it's sort of like, same tool, somebody else using it. The number one thing developers can sniff out is a tool that wasn't developed for them, right? It's been being repurposed for them, and that tends to get rejected. But now we're talking about being able to do kind of real-time data, log information, telemetry information tied back into, eventually it isn't in the IDE yet. They've got their own observability platform, but they will put it in the IDE. To be able to say, got this issue from ops, I think it's in this area, pursuing it, I can pull that data together through my lens of the world, which is my IDE as a developer, and start to really kind of analyze and do some real-time assessment. And then you have their Davis AI, which is, they've invested early on in AI. One of the companies that actually did, as opposed to claim to. And they're maturing that. At the same time, the other standout thing for me was enhancing Davis AI with Kubernetes information, really leaning hard into Kubernetes observability. As Kubernetes goes everywhere, it's got to be easier to run. We talk about how complex it is, and it is getting easier. But it's not only because of tools, but also AI support. And as that gets built more into tools, that's also interesting. And I guess the third thing was a bit of a look forward on security, cloud security posture management. coming out with something a little bit later this year, mid-year or so in that space. So, they've been around a long time, or in relatively speaking, in DevOps years, they've been around a long time. But they're continuing to innovate. I'd say good to them, and they're they're taking it seriously. They're not just hanging around.
I agree. They've reinvented themselves, in many ways, and look, they've got a great solution set.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're definitely a player to be reckoned with there. Mitch, I wanted to close things off though with a heartfelt thank you to a friend of you and I, our friend Sasha Labarre.
Yeah.
Sasha is the co-founder of CloudBees. Of course, before that, Sasha was one of the key people at JBoss.
Right.
But, CloudBees always had a special place in my heart when we talk about DevOps, Mitch. When I first launched DevOps.com, CloudBees was the second sponsor that signed on and helped us get off the ground. And, we've been working with CloudBees ever since, not as much recently. They've undergone, their own set of changes, but certainly for most of those years, Sasha's been a mainstay, him and KK, and of course, KK left, then he's come back. But Sasha announced last week that he'll be stepping back from an active role. I think he's still going to keep his board seat, but he'll be stepping back from an active role on CloudBees. And, just a shout out thanking him for what he's done, not just for CloudBees or DevOps.com, but for the DevOps community in general, in the open source community. And, I don't think he's done innovating, creating, businessing. I'm looking forward to what's next for Sasha. But wherever it is, Godspeed and good luck, and we'll be watching.
Yeah, big thanks to you, Sasha. And, that was part of my entry into DevOps, with Jenkins, late Hudson and then early Jenkins, getting involved in that. So, he's done a great deal for this community. And like you said, I bet there's more communities that will benefit from his DNA and innovation and entrepreneurship and technology. So look forward to
absolutely.
So thanks, Sasha.
All right. So Mitch, you and I, of course, spoke. Let's share it with our audience. I think going forward for DevOps chats, we're going to focus on bringing in some key folks every 2 weeks when we do this. Key people in the DevOps community, whether practitioners, executives, vendors, what have you. We'll be lining them up. Of course, if you're listening to this and you think you'd be a good guest or you have a suggestion for a good guest for DevOps chats, let us know. We'll probably be doing an interview and talk as the new format going forward, right? So 2 parts to every episode. And I'm looking forward to it, man.
I think it'll be great. We used to do more guests when you and I did early podcasting on Still Secure after all these years, and Shimmy after all these years. And there'll be some opportunities if people, we're doing more and more kind of full episode of things where companies on a sponsored basis come in and get a real chance to dive in a little bit deeper in conversation with us. So there'll be those opportunities too. So we'll have some spotlight time where we'll take a little bit of time with companies or individuals coming in, as well as being able to offer something a little more thorough to folks that are interested in sponsor kind of thing. So reach out to us. I guess, Alan, textrungroup.com, is that the best way to do that?
That'll work, Ashimmy. Or look, if we're going for DevOps, go to Ashimmy at DevOps.com.
There you go.
ASHIMMY at DevOps.com. And we'll work from there.
Where can they hear about Shimmy Sits? Where's that at? Tell us about that.
Thursdays, 2:30 on LinkedIn Live. We took a little excerpt from that, Mitch, and put it on YouTube Shorts from 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And it's got like 15,000 views already on YouTube Shorts. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I'm doing that every Thursday, always looking. If you want to join in on LinkedIn Live, you can ask questions, comments. We try to put it in there. We're just experimenting with different formats, and it's fun. It keeps, you know me, I don't have a shortage of things that I like to talk about.
Yep, you got to keep changing with the times, or suddenly you aren't with the times anymore.
Well, I'm shooting for the next Super Bowl halftime show.
Is that, yeah, well, hey, I can just see you up there now, rapping DevOps. So.
You bet. All right, Mitch, this is a great way to get back on the wagon here with DevOps Chats. Looking forward to doing more. But until next time, I'm Alan Schimmel.
And this is Mitch Ashley.
And you've just listened to
DevOps Chats.